With over 2,000 episodes and over 200 stations, Under the Hood has the knowledge to make your car feel good. This is Under the Hood.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom. You can reach us at 866-594-4150 and get on the air with us. And we're going to go right back to the phones. And we're going to talk to Roman, who's got a Suburban. How are you doing?
Good. So I have a 2014 Chevy Suburban, and what the problem is last couple of years, sometimes it can go away for 6-7 months, it comes back. What I'll do is I'll unlock the car with it's not an e-fob, but it's the, I don't know too much about vehicles. It's just the keyless. And sometimes I'll go out there and the battery or the car is completely dead. Won't even turn over. When you put it in there, nothing will happen. You wait for 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes you're sitting in there waiting if you have that much time. All of a sudden it'll start again, and then you can turn the key and start it. And then I'll put it in park somewhere along the line 3-4 months down the road. Turn off the car, go back to it. The key doesn't work. You have to use the key to get in the door, put it in there, and it's dead again. So if I want to make the process quicker, I can take the car, and when I say jump it, all I got to do is hook it up to the car that works, vehicle, and just tap it with the red and black where it needs to be, and all of a sudden lights will go on. You can turn it on, be just fine. I've taken it in. They've done a diagnostic test. They say that where I've taken it, they said that they couldn't get codes because the battery died, but I put a new battery in it and it still does this. So I don't know what's going on.
And you said this is a 2014, correct?
Do what?
This is a 2014, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be the last year of the previous generation, correct? Because 15, I think, was the year they went to the updated generation. I'm just trying to get through my head which system that has. But regardless, you're not jump starting it. You're basically just giving it the paddles for a second.
Yeah, it's not a jump start. I just put them on there just so then it'll just, and I'll remove the battery or I don't even have to remove it. I just have to touch it on the right spot. And then the lights go on, like, my keys are already turned over. So then when the lights go on, then I know, all right, I'm good to go. I can go start it. And I've never had it seems like it might be with the something with the pushing buttons with the fob or the keyless, just because I feel like sometimes during the winter when we try to start it up by itself, sometimes that maybe have to do with it, but I honestly have no clue.
Well, this is we'll give you some ideas. This is an interesting one because when you said it at first, I thought we had the impression maybe this thing was just dying going down the road, but this is all initial. You get in it and it is like it is dead. There's no power, no lights on, nothing, right?
Correct. And if I sit there long enough, mess around with it sometimes will literally, key go on, lights go on, and start it up, just fine.
It sounds like it's not getting a good connection to get power into the vehicle, and if you're messing around with a battery and it comes back, that even reinforces that a little more. We have sometimes where cables can be tight on the battery, but there's just enough corrosion, and it can be a light corrosion where you can't really see it, like battery terminals that foam up on the lead acid batteries. It might just be just enough corrosion where it's not making a good contact. And the first thing we do is take off both cables, clean them, sand them good, make sure they're good and shiny and clean, and make sure that we pull the cable end back a little bit, the cover off it. We don't see any corrosion up inside of that terminal area where it crimps onto the cable itself, where the terminal crimps on, and then connect them back and see what'll work. I mean, that's the first thing. And then we also check the grounds where they go from the vehicle down to the engine block, make sure those are solid, and then the one back up to the body itself. If they're not good and solid, you're going to have this problem.
Roman, because what you're doing when you give it that little bit of jolt, you're just basically like pushing through a dam of some sort of a resistance block that's not allowing it to move. So when you do that touch, it doesn't matter what's happening with the key switch at that time?
No. Well, I always have the key turned over, like just for like if you want, the battery on, just so that I know that it's on.
Russ, you guys see a lot of problems with
the key.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I was talking over there. But Russ, you guys see a lot of problems with ignition switches in that era?
Never. I haven't had a one fail yet, but I have had a lot of body modules fail, like a dozen of them. But
would that shut lights down and everything like that?
Oh yeah.
It would just be intermittent.
Well, the weird part is, I'm sorry, but the weird part is just the other day it works. I unlocked the car and got in, dead. So I was like, it can happen that quick.
Sure.
Where the battery's working and then you get in and it's dead.
Yeah, that's
so is there anything on like if it is like as like a security lockout where if somehow it's detecting it's getting, like I said, I don't know much about this.
Well, if it was a security issue, Roman, even if that was triggering, you'd still have dome lights. You'd still have you could still turn on your headlights. Okay. So it sounds to us like you're losing all your power, and that is a base connection issue. And if someone could show you how yourself, it'd be interesting to take just a simple voltmeter and see or even a test light, and just to be able to go back and trace back to like where the power junction block is at.
Power on the fuse box.
And see if you got power there. And see if just see where the power might be. Or else, even for that matter, go out and check the battery when it's dead and see, you're going to see, do I have my 12, 13, 14 volts at the battery? Just if a simple test light that you could track back down the system, because unless this does it at a shop where they can do just that, start tracing the power to find out where it stops at, they're not going to get a code. If it was a new enough vehicle, they might get a few low voltage codes or some random codes that'll come up in a module when they don't get the right power. That can trigger codes. But no, they're not going to see anything because this is in the base of the system when it starts up. And so I really have to believe have you had any work done to it? Has there been a motor replaced, a transmission replaced, anything done to it in the last year or so?
No, I've had it for about 4 years, and about a year in it started happening, but it was very like here and there it was happening, wasn't much. But just in the last month, it's happened 3 or 4 times, and we're stuck in a parking lot.
Oh, that would drive me nuts. It would drive me nuts.
It does, because you can't trust it all the time. Nope. So you just leave it on when you're sitting in the parking lot waiting for somebody.
I think what you need to probably need to do is either leave it with someone that they could say, hey, could you go out every morning and check this and see if it starts? Just, Russ has done stuff like this. So just leave it with us. We'll go out and if it happens to fail on us, then we can check it. But if it doesn't fail, we're not going to find anything wrong. Isn't that what it boils down to, Russ?
Yeah, pretty much.
But otherwise, have somebody show you the different lugs where power goes into like the fuse block and where you could check just to see if there's power when it dies. And that could be the clue that maybe there's a short within the power distribution center where the fuses go under the hood. Maybe the plug-in on the back side of that has rattled and it's just a little bit loose and it makes connection back and forth. And just, it's just something crazy like that is going on. Or like Russ said, the body control module is failing internally and it's hitting a hard stop when it has one of the transistors not quite seated right. And as temperature changes with your body in there or whatever, it gives it just enough of an environmental change that it lets it go. It's got to be something like that.
Okay, so then you said a lot of different words. I'm trying to write them all down to take it in and say, hey, this might be it. You're saying it's the connections to the battery to, you said power module and
well, just the basics. They'll get it if they just tell them that it's got to be in the base connections. It's battery to battery cables, internal corrosion or short in a battery cable, or some of those new enough. It might have some sort of device in the power cable. What are those for, Russ?
To shut off the battery when the airbags go off.
Yeah,
power disconnect.
They have different things in there they'll put in line. Maybe one of them little mechanisms is failing, but something in that path of the power going down. And then the next stop is a power distribution center under the hood that has fuses in it, and the wiring harnesses connect on the back side of it, and power comes into that to spread out to the other systems in the vehicle. And there could be something shorting inside of that. Also going down to the starter, there's main wires, ground wire from the main power system to the block and to the frame. Check all that. And then if it's not that, then you have to get under the dash. You get into things like the ignition switch, the body control module. There's something there that is shorting. But it's going to be a tricky one if they can't have it fail right when it's there, or can't, like I said, train you up to be able to at least test some simple things when it does die, so they can get a better clue of where to focus next. Otherwise, the only result that you're going to do is you're going to say, all right, I can't figure it out. Let's put new battery cables on it. Let's put a new fuse block under the hood. That gets expensive when you start just throwing parts at it. So you want to duplicate that failure and figure out where the problem starts and stops, and then include it in from there.
Okay.
All right. Good luck.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care. Yeah, when you start getting into battery drains on vehicles and ones that just don't have any power, this is better than a battery drain for sure, because it's just off. You go, hey, it's dead. There's no lights. There's nothing coming on here at all. So
it's weird that he can just set in there and then it'll take off. So with no power, just sitting in there, that it would change. That is really strange.
That's probably a connection to the battery.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back on Under the Hood. 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Find us on radio, YouTube, Facebook, and podcast by searching Under the Hood Show. Just like Chicken Man, we're everywhere.
Yes, we are. We are everywhere, for sure.
We got some new break material there. That's a good one. I hadn't heard that yet.
Do you know that one, Shannon?
No, I don't. But
I just remember The Adventures of Chicken Man. Give proper credit where credit is due. They were great. They were. So I
didn't know if this is even worse for us. I didn't know if I'm laughing at myself. I didn't know if it was The Adventures of Chicken, or if it was Chicken Man. They're everywhere, or if it's like Chicken Man, it's everywhere, like chicken.
Oh, yeah, just like chicken, man, it's everywhere. Yeah, chicken is everywhere. You can find it on about every corner.
Oh, I entertained myself.
No, Chicken Man was a great bit that was on years ago, and the gentleman who did it was the same voice that you probably wouldn't recognize the Chicken Man unless you heard it on the air, but the voice of it, I can't remember his name for anything right now, but I used to. He did do you remember all across America there was helpwanted.com ads? So here, you had Sioux Falls helpwanted.com, you had San Francisco helpwanted.
Yeah, I remember that a little bit.
And there was always a guy playing the part with the secretary, and he'd go, I just don't know how to come up with a good employee. Where am I going to go? And his secretary would say, you should use SiouxFallsHelpWanted.com. And they have all the things. Yeah. And then he'd be like, fine, okay. And glad I thought of it.
So that was his voice?
That was the guy who did Chicken Man. He died years ago now, and so is she. But it was it was a great deal. We actually have a local, the lady who did those ads was actually here. We have a place called Intech Cleaning here, and there were some great ads they did for a while with the owner of the company, Jerry Berg, with the secretary.
Yeah, and
he'd say, "It's late. Do you have insomnia? And or do you have insomnia too?" And he'd say, "No, I'm having a phone conversation." And it's like, "Do you have wet carpets?" "I don't know. Let me go check."
Yeah.
Well, I can't tell. Why not? The carpets are underwater. I'll be right over. It was so that was the lady that did it.
I see. I always assumed that was Jerry's wife or something. I know Jerry. I should know these things.
They're just some fun with radio. There's always fun things that go and ads that come up. We had a guy that did some other ads here in town for a while too. That's passed on now. There were just so many great
voices you hear and just never maybe know the rest of the story.
Right. Yeah. Lots of stuff. So we got to give away a hoodie. Definitely.
Who's winning a hoodie today?
Jerry Wrigley wins a hoodie from the Under the Hood Show and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. You can find them there on the web. And if you want to know anything about automotive, so you can be a better technician, or you just want to go out and that's what you want to do is be a technician. Our temporary call screener today, Alyssa, maybe she wants to learn how to work on electric cars or something. She could be in there pushing the buttons, diagnostic. She's like, yeah, okay. You check out Universal Technical Institute at uti.edu. That's where you will find them. So we're going to go to Sioux City, Iowa, and we're going to talk to Doug. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing good.
So what's going on with your 2000 Malibu?
Well, it's been a real dependable car. Drive to work every day, year after year after year. Kept the maintenance up on it and everything. And recently, I parked it just for a short time, and now it'll crank, but it will not start. So I checked the battery, even switched out the battery, looked at some things, and she'll just crank like crazy, but it won't start. I can smell the fuel. Of course, I can hear the pump running, and I've got all my lights and everything. It just won't fire. Won't even try.
What engine is in this Malibu, the 4-cylinder or the 6-cylinder?
The 316.
Okay, all right. That helps us a little bit just to know which one you got. And when you drove it, it was all good until you shut it off, and now it just doesn't want to go again.
That is correct.
Have you been able to verify spark on this car yet?
No, I haven't.
I would look at that. So if this car, when you turn the key on, the fuel pump relay will activate and it will go ahead and turn that pump on. You'll hear it.
Which he said he did.
I did.
Yep.
That's the start. And then when you crank it, it's got to give you injector pulse and spark. Now, if it has neither, you're smelling fuel, so I'm guessing it has at least injector pulse and probably no spark. That would be the best thing for you, because that would lead us to probably an ignition, a module that's failed on it, because you're not going to fail all three coils at once, but you could have a module fail and not have spark.
All right.
You could lose that module and lose both fuel and spark, because the spark is controlled by the module except for the timing of it, and then the injectors are controlled by the computer. Two separate pieces in there. But I would check and see if you have spark. If you have no spark, but you are smelling fuel, so the injectors are running, it tells me that the crankshaft sensor is doing its job. Does this car have a tachometer on the dash or no?
Yes, it does.
Does it move at all when you crank the car? Does it bounce up and down a little bit, or does it just stay flat at 0?
That I haven't noticed. It's on the left-hand side there.
Take a look.
The speedometer, of course.
Yeah, take a look at that. And if you see it move a little bit, that's telling me that you're probably getting a little pulse. If it's completely flat and dead, probably not. And it could be as simple as just an ignition module. So that would be great. And that's something that can fail quickly and just.
And they're not overly expensive.
No.
They're I'm not going to say a common failure item, but it's a common place to have a failure when you have this problem.
Right. Yeah, so it's definitely a possibility. Does that help you out a little bit?
And on that car there, it's a pack. I mean, it's got a module that's pancaked underneath the 3 coils.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that how that one still
Under
is,
the
Russ?
front exhaust manifold.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a bugger to get at, but that is it's a bolt-on piece that's just kind of hidden underneath the front of the engine up there.
What does that do again? That piece? I know about the 3. We'll call them the coils. The 3 coils.
It's
on
under
a tray.
Under the coil.
That tray they're mounted on?
Well, the coils themselves sit on top of the module.
Right.
There's another layer underneath those coils, and that's the electronic module that controls the pulse of the injectors and the the firing of the coils and the pulsing of the injectors. It's all combined.
That comes through the module. Yeah, that goes into the computer and tells it when to. Or the computer decides when it fires off of that.
But like Russ is saying, if your tach's not moving, then you got to check your crank signal. You could have it wouldn't start without, if his crank sensor suddenly failed, would it?
Nope, nothing.
So you got to check and make sure you got crank signal first. There are some minor test equipment you could buy or rent to check some of those things. You could get a node light and see if you've got injector pulse, or simply pull a plug off and put a different spark plug in it and lay it there like you did on a lawnmower. You can still check for spark that way and see if you got spark.
That was going to be my next move, actually.
So check that out, and I think you'll find yourself rounding up to one of those two areas.
All right. Good luck.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
You
your
bet.
help. I do appreciate it. I love your program.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
calling. We appreciate it. Take care. All right, we're going to jump right back in, and we're going to go to Len in Sioux Falls with a 2016 Kia Sorento with a leak. Where's this thing leaking at, Len?
It's leaking on the rear seal of the transmission. It's been doing it for about a month. The car has 100,000 miles on it.
Okay.
And it's not a whole lot. I mean, enough to have to wipe it up a little bit, but we haven't added anything to it. But they want $1,400 to replace it. Is that which?
I think it doesn't matter if it's one or the other, but I'm more curious than anything. Are you leaking transmission fluid or leaking engine oil?
They said it's transmission fluid.
Yeah, that's the seal, the input shaft seal on that transmission. If it's that much money, they've got to pull the transmission out, take the torque converter out, put a seal in that, and then you're looking at, that's a lot of time involved to do that.
Yeah.
We do these at our own shop. We've had this experience, and they're similar in price, maybe a little bit less, but there's not a really easy fix, and if they don't leak that often on the Sorento, it's just not a problem we see very often at all.
Really?
So hopefully once it's fixed, it's done, but they'll definitely want to check that pump bushing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because
might be worn out.
They might get in there and find out that, okay, not only do you have a leak, the reason you have a leak is because this shaft we got too much movement here. That torque converter is bouncing around a little bit in there because the bushing is out in the front of the tranny or something. That's the things that they're going to want to inspect. Otherwise, you could spend that $1,300 to put a seal in it and then have a leak again in a short order.
Well, and before I even went to pull the transmission out to do that, I would check the end play of that crankshaft on that Kia engine. Since it's a 16 Kia, I would definitely
make sure you don't have play on the crank.
That play can be checked in 15, 20 minutes versus tearing that trans out. And if there's a ton of play on that crank, you're going to start having some other issues too. But that's something if it's flopping,
Okay,
going
so
back
we're
and
scaring
forth.
the bejesus out of you right now. So
Those are pretty much free checks.
So, but when it's apart, the
end play.
Yeah, the end play you could check.
Verify end play. If it's got a lot of end play, don't do that trans because you're going to have more leaks and it's going to leak again. But if it's fine, then you can proceed. But we don't want you to do something that's $1,400 and not.
Right.
And you could try a conditioner with a seal restorer, but it's most likely, if you've got enough that it's leaking out onto your floor eventually, it's probably a bigger leak than a conditioner is going to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, with 100,000 miles on the car, and if the leak isn't bad, you can budget for this. And if it's not losing so much that you have a level change over a period of time, you might just put up with it for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what kind of conditioner would you use? I know you guys always recommend.
Justice Brothers makes a transmission conditioner, which is available in our local market. Our Sturtevant store does carry some of those, but otherwise, a lot of professional shops like ours have it in stock, and it's something we use in there, and it's made to condition the seal. So, like leather seats, when they start to get hard before they start to crack, if you put the conditioner on, it'll keep that pliable and allow it to seal, because you can't seal anything with a rock hard piece of rubber in there.
It's worth trying, maybe. And like I said, Russ said, I'm going to repeat what Russ said, but you might have someone with the skill level first to check to make sure that the crankshaft doesn't have end play from wear inside the engine.
And play in the crankshaft.
Front to back.
Yeah, so make sure it's not walking back and forth, causing damage to that seal.
Would anybody be able to check that then, you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Any shop could be able to check that. It's a pretty universal, easy check for that. So does that help you out?
Okay, one more time. It's called crankshaft, whether or not there's play in the crankshaft.
End play, front to rear, yep.
in play.
Yeah, so basically,
All right, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
that crankshaft's laying there in the bearings, and instead of laying there just all in one place, it's just if they get play on them, I'm doing my pen
forward
here.
and backwards.
They'll just start walking back and forth on those bearings, and so that crank is moving end to end like a spool you'd watch move as it rotated, kind of just a little bit back and forth, and it does that. And it gets too much of that, it starts taking out rear main seals. It'll take out front tranny seals. And with the little bit of a history we know of those Kia engines getting some wear inside of them, that's something we'd just be aware of before we started tearing that apart. Okay?
Well, great. I appreciate it, guys. You bet. Thanks. I
Take
really
care, Lynn.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye.
All right, we're gonna jump right back. Well, you know what? We're gonna take a short break here, and we'll be right back on Under the Hood. The Under the Hood show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
When all else fails, get a bigger dead blow hammer.
Of course, that always works. It works for Chris.
He's got a variety now.
Yeah, he's had some listeners send him some dead blow hammers. That's great. We always appreciate it when listeners participate, especially when they, especially with some of the stuff Chris is looking for. We're going to go right back to the phones. You can call us too at 866-594-4150. And we're going to jump right in and talk to Murray about his 2015 Honda Civic. Hello, Murray.
Hello.
How you doing?
All right, sunshine.
Oh, that's good. I like it when the sun's shining. What's going on with the Honda Civic?
You go to start it, you hit the starter and it won't do anything. You shut the ignition off and on 2 or 3 times, then it'll start.
Is this a manual trans or an automatic?
Automatic.
Okay, automatic. And when you say it doesn't start, does it turn over with the starter and not start, or nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
Okay. Well,
this is like the third call like this today we've had, right? With no starter.
Second, and then the other one was a crank.
Oh,
no
the other
start.
one was a parasitic drain. Yeah, that's right.
And then the crank no start in the Malibu. But so, Murray, what we see a lot of on the Civic, we have put a number of starters on these cars, which is the cheap route and not too terribly hard to replace. What you might try is the next time you go to crank it and it doesn't start, you could have somebody get under the hood, and if you we usually take like a long breaker, or like a breaker bar, an extension or a long screwdriver, and we tap on the side of the starter a little bit, and if it takes off,
or if you have a dead blow hammer,
right? You can't get to that starter with a hammer, though.
No, I just had to throw it out there.
If it turns over and cranks right away, then that's a quick guarantee that the starter is bad. But if it does not, the other thing we've seen on those vehicles, we've seen a few ignition switches that have failed inside, and they've had to go in and put a new switch in and then be programmed for the security. But it's more than likely it's a starter thing. That's the more common thing compared to an ignition switch. The other thing it can be too is battery connections on those Hondas. We've had a few of them where those small little connections just don't make a good connection. They have to be taken off, cleaned up, and then put back on good and tight, and that might take care of it. That could help you out.
Yeah, I took the cables off and cleaned them. Thought maybe that was a bad ground or something, but it didn't help any.
Sure.
Well, if next, like I said, if you got a test light, like we talked about with an earlier caller, when it's dead, just you have to see where that power is getting to. Is it getting, is the power leaving the battery and getting down to the starter even? Do you have voltage there? Is the ignition switch allowing the power to move through the switch? Just find a few key test points where you can check voltage next time it's dead and just see where it stops at, and then that'll at least get you in the right football field to work on.
Yeah, and anytime you're getting a test light for anybody that's looking at those, I mean, we don't usually use test lights on a lot of circuits, but on basic ones like a battery.
That's why I brought that up.
We get a test light with a voltmeter built right into it. So it tells you the voltage right on the side of it, and then it shows red if you've got it hooked up, positive and negative, and if it's backwards, it'll show,
more of a modern tool than the good old clampy test light.
They're still cheap. They're like $20. So does that help you out?
All right. Yeah, I'll check it out.
All right. Very much. Take care. All right, we're going to jump right back in, and we're going to go over and talk to Jake with a 2017 Ford Expedition. How you doing, Jake?
Good. How are you guys?
Really well. What's up with that Ford Expedition?
Well, I called in about 3 weeks ago struggling with it. Since I brought it to the dealership, I'm having key fob issues, and the vehicle just won't register that I'm even pushing any buttons.
Mm-hmm.
The dealership said I had the wrong keys. They were wrong, too, because they started ripping it apart and called me halfway through, and I said, oh, I didn't tell you guys to do that. So they told me the problem would be fixed with new keys, and it wasn't.
Oh, that's...
So where I'm at is I've tried a new TPM module in it.
Okay.
I've tested the CAN bus wires. They were working. Now I'm kind of getting an intermittent signal. I just don't know. Do they need to be hot all the time, even when the vehicle's off, the CAN bus wires?
Well, that's the thing. They're transmitting data and not voltage. So they do communicate whenever the CAN bus is active, which means with the key off, they'll be active for a certain amount of time until all the modules go to sleep, and then they're going to be dead. There's going to be no talking across them. You could see that with an oscilloscope, what's going on. But then there's a wake-up signal when you unlock the doors or when you approach the vehicle with a keyless type fob that is proximity, where it senses that you're near it, where you can just touch the button on the door lock to open it. But once you hit that button, it sends a wake-up signal over the CAN bus, lights up every module in the vehicle, and then you start it and you go from there. So when you're testing it, we test those for a short to ground, short to power, and we check communication once the car is awake. We light it up, hit the button, and then check everything. Now, there are certain modules on the CAN bus that can take out the key part of it, the starting. So if you have a short in any module in that car, yeah.
I think I remember right. This was a salvage title vehicle that right?
Yeah, and one thing to add is they put an XLT mirror on it, and it's supposed to have power folding, blinker in the mirror. So there is a DCM driver control module code for that.
Right, the door module.
Would that affect it not working?
It might. Yeah. If it's shorted, I'd unplug that door module and try the system. Anytime. So if you look at it, if you scan it and there's faults in any one of the modules that's not related to the key or the engine computer or the body control module, I'd unplug that module and then see if the car starts, because we've had many of them, and how we diagnose them is I pull up the all code scan on my scanner and I read and I say, hey, this thing's got heated seats. Why can I not see the seat module? So then I go unplug the seat module and now the car starts. So then I can diagnose that system. You eliminate the circuits that are not working or the ones that have faults in them. A lot of times you can tell too, it'll say like in a body control module, it says lost communication with, 10 modules in the car. Well, then those modules aren't at fault. It's the one that they've lost communication with. So it's a long process, and there's some good YouTube videos out there and some bad ones, but they kind of get you a little idea of how the systems work. And most of the CAN buses are going to be very similar. It's a lot of work. But
what was initially wrong with the vehicle? Oh, we got to get to the end here. What was real quick? What was wrong with the vehicle?
Well, I just can't use the remote. It only works in the backup slot.
No. Yeah. I was curious what was wrong with the vehicle when it got wrecked.
Oh, it got hit in the rear, which is right by the RFA module, but the RFA module seems to be working. I can see all the modules on ForeScan. The only code I have is in the DCM for the wrong mirror. I got the wrong mirror on the car.
One of the things we always tell people, we've been obviously around repairables our whole life, but it's the dynamics.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right, that does it for another hour of the End of the Hood show. Another hour is coming up next. For myself and Shannon Nordstrom and Chris, who's not here, 866-594-4150. The End of the Hood show is brought to you by Sturtevant's.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. I am Russ Evans, along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
You can call us at 866-594-4150 and get yourself under the hood. You can answer most any car question you have, hopefully, and save you a little money. But maybe we can't, but we'll do our best shot, see what we can do.
Yeah, you can talk to Alyssa today. She's filling in for producer Doug, and Russ is filling in for Russ and co-host Chris.
Chris.
So he's doing dual duty today back there behind the board. I'm always impressed. He keeps that all going. And
I don't know how. Just do it.
You made it. You can work it a lot better.
Yeah, it's weird. You sit back here and you're pushing buttons and just doing stuff, and it's you just find yourself reaching and pushing a button, and it just happens. If you have to think about it, you're not going to do it. It's like when somebody asks you, which hand do you brush your teeth with? And if they ask you, you have to think for just a second. Yeah, I got it. And it's just one of those things where it's
the reason why Steph Curry can hit 3-pointers with ease. It's muscle memory.
Yeah. It's definitely not. If those guys hit them a lot better with those than if they stop and they get a free throw and they have to concentrate. Okay, I'm going to get this. If they're just running and doing it,
it's crazy the way those guys
they're really
shoot.
Good at it.
Muscle memory, lots of practice.
Let's hit on some recall here.
Oh my gosh, there's been a bunch bouncing out in the news.
Toyota has just got hammered, so they're recalling some trucks, the Tacoma trucks, about 380,000 of them for some welding debris that could. That's in the rear axle that could cause some nuts to loosen and part to fall off.
My imagination of this when I read that is that they've got slag on the rear axle housing, and it's not allowing the backing plate to seat on quite all the way when they assemble it.
So the nuts could come loose.
So then eventually that slag breaks loose, or that welding chunk, and then the nuts are loose. And then it affects your braking system, your e-brake system, or whatever it might happen to be.
Whatever it is, you want to get that thing in and get it repaired. Now, in a separate recall.
But that was pretty new ones, though. It was like 22, 23 model years.
Pretty new. And now in a separate recall, we've got another 280,000 vehicles affected, which, again, are the Toyota Tundra, the Sequoia, the Lexus LS600. And this is over a transmission that could possibly not disengage when it's put in park, meaning that it's still in drive, even though it's in park. That could cause it to creep and roll because the park poles aren't 100% solid on any vehicle. They can move if you put enough, if you try to put a vehicle in park, anybody who's ever put one in park rolling, they know what happens. It just goes click, click, click and ratchets. That can happen. So that's big. But then again, in the same week now, they've got about 18,000 vehicles with defective rear cameras. Now, again, this is Toyota. So they got to replace some rear cameras in vehicles that won't display an image. And then about 4,000 Camrys for a headset issue. That's nuts.
A headset issue?
Headrest.
I was going to say.
Headset, yeah, headrest. So they had some welding issues on some of them. They want to verify that we're okay, so they're secure and solid in driving and crashes and things. So last year, Toyota had about 4.2 million vehicles recalled. And that's what I found according to the NHTSA website data, which does the recording of these. And that's just Toyota. There are millions when you look at all the other manufacturers as well. So we're not picking on Toyota. We're just making you aware of this because there's safety recalls, and we want you to get those free recalls performed. One of the things you can go to a dealer and get done for free. Get your free recall.
You said you're not picking on Toyota because I'm not either, but now
just happen to be the one.
But now I am because I got a card that I wanted to talk about.
You got a recall roulette call?
Yeah, we do, and it happens to be Toyota. And if Chris would have been here, I don't know if this is.
Is it his Toyota?
It is, and this is the Toyota windshield out-of-pocket reimbursement program. And
he has a chip in his windshield right now. He needs
sent on behalf, and it says that you are receiving this notice because you may be eligible to participate in an out-of-pocket reimbursement program. Toyota may reimburse certain out-of-pocket costs incurred to repair or replace a genuine Toyota OEM windshield that was cracked on a 2016 to 2018 Toyota Prius or Prius Prime vehicles that were not otherwise reimbursed. So there must have been something going on with some windshields.
Causing them to crack?
Yeah, and so they were supposed to reimburse people, and apparently not everybody got reimbursed. And so there must have been a class suit of some sort that's chasing these people down, or they've hired this company to find out who these people are so they don't end up in a class settlement. So possible reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses on a genuine Toyota windshield that cracked in a 2016 to 18 Toyota Prius. So you might check with your dealer if you happen to fall into that. So that's not a common one.
No, it's got a crack right here in one spot. I remember it must have been that
It was
car.
Bob's.
Yeah. We better go after and recalls, a lot of people ignore them. It's amazing how many people have not had them done. We get them into cars into our shop. Chris is really bad about them. He had the rear axle recall for the one that had people that died, and he just
on a Windstar van back in the day.
It'll be fine. And then I finally looked at it and said, Chris, this is really bad. And then that's about the time he got rid of the thing. But it's just, you got to go in. They're not charging you anything. Why would you not go in if it's a free recall? Do you have dealership anxiety that they might charge you for something that you didn't ask for when there's a recall? I don't know.
For a lot of people, it's just flat out inconvenience. They got their life going. They got their schedule. They got the kids to pick up. They got the basketball practice to get the kids to. They got church. There's no downtime. And so having downtime is a problem.
So Shannon, I had this Toyota in our shop this week. Yeah. And of course, I have to pay every time I program these vehicles, so I'm really frustrated, and the payment has expired now. So when they get it back, I'm going to say I need it. And last time this happened, I said you're going to have to reimburse me, and they said, well, we'll just give you credit for the 2 more days. And say I don't have anything to program. Well, that's not our problem. Goodbye. It's crazy. So I ended up going to the dealership to have it programmed because I had to get it done, and they're connected constantly. They've got a year-long.
They got a lifeline.
24-hour day. Yeah, subscription's always there, but it's the same programming. So I go in there, and I'm telling you, sitting in that waiting room for a little bit, I thought it'd be quick. So I sat there, and I listened to other people. How interesting it is, and how lucky I feel that I work on cars and that I don't have to go through the thoughts of what could it be. It's almost like being in, you had some people telling other people, oh, my car did this. That's what's wrong with yours, when one has a Ford, one has a Toyota. It's completely different. And then other people, it's like waiting for a diagnostic for the call from the doctor when they found a spot or something. They're like, oh no, what if it's this? What if it's that? I don't, this could just ruin everything. I don't, and they're going back and forth. And
it's true anxiety.
Then I see them come out and they're like, sir, your air filter is really dirty. I see a note in here that we've checked it the last 8 times you've been in and noted that it's dirtier each time, and you didn't want to change it. Well, they're really expensive. We understand, sir, but you need to change it today, or your vehicle is not going to run. This is so dirty, and it was just huge.
It was bad, huh?
Packed, and it can't breathe. So your check engine light's on. The car is running really rich and hesitating. You need to replace this, or it's just not going to. The tech doesn't want to put it back in. Oh, okay. How much is that going to be? Well, it's going to be $100 for this and that and put it in. Well, he dodged a bullet there. It's just interesting.
The problem could have been much greater later if he wouldn't have replaced that and you start putting all that dirt into the engine, you'll wear it out.
I heard the same thing at a restaurant this weekend, listening to two tables, one on each side of us. They were talking about car stuff and obviously there was a lot of anxiety. So I can imagine it's got to be like me when I go to the dentist. I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen?
What are they going to
next?
find?
So, yeah, you just don't know what's coming up. So we're going to take a short break on Under the Hood, and then we're going to get to your calls, which are starting to stack up here. 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
YouTube certified mechanic. Yeah, that's not quite what they mean by certified mechanic. This is Under the Hood.
866-594-4150. You're on Under the Hood with Russ and Shannon. Chris will be back soon, we hope.
Not today.
No, not today. Well, last time we said that, and what did he do?
He showed up after the show.
Showed up when the show was over. I look and I said, who was producer Doug talking to? And I look around the corner, and there's Chris just chatting away. He'd been in there for a half hour or so. I'm like, come on, man. Get in here.
Well, he'd finally got his back relaxed enough where he'd get off the floor, so we got to give him a little slack.
Oh, we were going to go right back to the phone, but we've lost him. We've lost Monty with the Corvette. I didn't know if it was Corvette with a Monty or Monty with a Corvette. They'll call back.
Well, we were talking before the show about, recalls, and not everything reaches the level where it's a recall. Sometimes you just get your typical service Boltons.
Some of it should. Some of
it shouldn't.
Yeah.
I get on that soapbox quite a bit.
Those fuel pumps that had, some vehicles had over 250,000 miles, and they were bringing them in because your fuel pump may fail. We found a failure in these. It's like, what happened to those limits where you had, if it was 10 years or 100,000 miles, we're not covering it over that. But these were some caravans that they were like 2012s, I think, and some of them had 200,000 miles. Like, we're going to get you a new fuel pump.
How about the Kia Hyundai engines that are under a safety recall?
Yeah. That's nuts.
It sure seems to be a mechanism so that they can only fix the ones that are bad. I mean, so it just stops them from having to replace all the engines. It says that when you have these conditions, we'll do these tests, and if these tests show these things, then we'll put an engine in it. And they're doing it under a safety recall, because we get into a little bit of a quandary on those about whether we're supposed to sell them or not sell them, and as a used engine if they haven't been checked yet. And it's a good engine, it's running good, but like any engine, it could fail at some point, and it could fail while you're in traffic, and that could happen with anything.
Yeah, these recalls are nuts, and I came up with something just a minute ago.
Yeah, are you going to bring up the...
Yeah, so with all these Cummins engines in the Rams, they were a big thing. I mean, we got like 50,000 views when we were talking about what our listeners had found on them. Why don't they let you buy carbon credits? They let all these big companies buy carbon credits when they're polluting a little more than they should. They could charge hey, I want to delete my truck. Well, that's going to cost you $50. What's that for? Well, that you're buying carbon credits. You're offsetting the carbon emissions. So many plants pollute, and there's so many big industries that pollute out there. They just say, well, you just pay a little fee and you can go on polluting.
They're trading it out with a system like they use. Like I think one of the big freight companies, they have supported a large forest in somewhere way south of here.
We're going to plant trees to offset the carbon. You know what? I tell you what, I know a lot of people that drive diesel trucks that would gladly get a tree planted, pay $50 and get a tree, or even $500 and plant a tree if they could be able to.
A lot of people that have those trucks have already planted a lot of trees because that's the business they're in.
Well, that's true. Environmental.
We're getting political here, kind of. We should probably pull back.
Well, I'm just talking about trucks. Trucks are awesome. They make the world go round. Everything brought to you is brought to you by a truck. So we're going to go right back to the phones, and we're going to talk to Monty with that 92 Corvette. How you doing, Monty?
Good. How are you this morning?
Good. What's up with the Monty?
I have
the Corvette Monty.
I have a 92 Corvette. It's got about 87,000 miles.
Okay.
And last summer it started dying on me and would let me sit anywhere from 10 minutes to 2.5 hours before it would start and run right. When it runs great. but when it dies, I just don't know how long it's going to take before it starts and it'll run again.
Usually, let me see. What do you got? You got a 350 in that?
It'd be an LT1 in there, right?
It's
LT1 350.
LT1 350. Yep. So with that engine, if the cam sensor in that engine fails, did it die on you, or was it after you shut it off it wouldn't restart?
No, it died on me.
Okay.
It dies on me.
So there's two things that happen. If you shut it off and then it won't restart until it's cooled off, that's a camshaft sensor usually. If it dies going down the road and won't restart, most often it's a crankshaft sensor that has failed. And if you read it with a scanner, you'll see that there's no RPM while you're cranking it at all. There's no cam sensor, no crank sensor. It's just dead. It could also be a fuel pump that's going bad. We had one of our salespeople, I can lean over to the right and I can see him around the corner. There he is. They had a similar car, that body style, 91, 92, and the fuel pump was pulling too many amps just from age, and it would just die, and then eventually it would restart when it was cool. But then what happened is it started blowing the fuse, the fuse that powers all that back there, and it had put a fuse in it, it'd run for a while, and then it'd blow that fuse, and they're trying to figure it out. It turned out it was just all that was wrong with it. It needed a fuel pump. So you're gonna have to find out: have we lost fuel pressure? Is the fuel pump not running? Turn the key, you hear it?
We did check the fuel pressure while it was acting up, and I'm getting plenty of fuel pressure.
Okay, you got fuel pressure. Okay, but you probably don't have spark or ignition if it's cranking and not starting. So I would definitely look now.
What are the symptoms that happen when that stupid Opti distributor goes haywire?
Well, that's the thing. The sensors are in that distributor. That's your crank and cam sensor built right into it, and in the Opti Spark, and that's what happens is when they're hot, they'll fail, and then you'll have no spark coming out of them. You can just check the spark right there at one of the wires, and then when they're cooled off, they'll work. And the first step we do is just pull the cap off, and if it's got antifreeze in it,
because they'll drip a little bit of coolant out of the water pump.
Yep.
And they'll get inside of that.
So if that is bad, you'll need to replace it and the pump with the updated distributor and everything and the pump. But also, if there's moisture in it, it'll cause that failure too. So you definitely want to look at that. But I would definitely pull the cap off that distributor, which is fun because it's right down buried in the front of the car there, and see if there's any moisture in it. Yep, under the water pump. See if there's any moisture at all in it. If there is, you just got to replace it. But that's basically your whole system. You can lose fuel injectors because of a computer issue, which was kind of common in those too. But you lose spark from the Opti Spark.
Well, Russ, I think that
you don't
go ahead.
You don't think it's the fuel injectors?
Unlikely in that car. If you have spark but you do not have fuel, you'll have to again look at the computer data on a scanner and see if it's showing that you've got RPM signal, and then you can use a Noid light to test and see if the injector is firing. If it is not, that usually means your computer is bad. They had some solder joints that would fail and transistors that would fail in those computers.
Hard to believe that all the injectors would fail. I mean, you could have one or two still failed and it would still try to run.
Yeah, you'll either lose half on one side when that happens. So more than likely it's going to be in that distributor. That's where I would lean to. Does that help you out?
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
All right.
Next question, if you got time.
We got a minute. Go ahead.
I've got an 09 Crown Victoria that's got a little play in the steering wheel. I've replaced the rack and pinion. I still have the play.
If you've replaced the rack and pinion, make sure the ball joints are solid and tight by trying to raise them up when the car is just enough off the ground that the tires are off the ground. Put a bar underneath it and lift up the tire. Make sure those ball joints are good, the wheel bearings are good, and the inner and outer tie rod ends. If all those are good, then that steering should be tight unless the whole cradle was moving up front, which is
there's a small little knuckle intermediate shaft there between the column and the gearbox
steering gear
that could be having play in it. Have somebody watch that input right at the steering gear compared with the turn of the wheel, and just see if you got you just kind of see if I'm turning. No, you're not. You can kind of feel it. It's hard for one person to do that, but that would be one thing.
Right.
One thing a person could do is look at that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, Bonnie.
Never got a chance to guess his color. I was going to throw that as a Berkeley Classic, so we'll have to move on for the next caller. We'll have a chance with the...
Are you still there, Monty? Oh, we just lost him.
It had to be red, right?
Blue.
Okay. He could maybe call back and let a listener know.
Berkeley One Classics is the company to go to insure that car for sure. You'll save yourself a ton of money and have a little confidence. We'll be right back on Under the Hood. The Under the Hood show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Guaranteed car repair advice or double your free back. This is Under the Hood.
That's right. 866-594-4150. Guaranteed advice or double your free back. We didn't charge you anything for it, so
Reminds me of a Doublemint gum commercial when you say that.
the double check. No discounts here. It was free to begin with, so. Okay, well, let's jump right back.
Take another Corvette call.
They're just coming at us like crazy. So we're going to talk to Bob with a 1970 Corvette with a tire pressure thing. Oh, what's up with Bob tire pressure? Tell me more.
Well, it's definitely not a CPMS issue, but
probably not.
A couple questions. My wife's uncle had given her this car, and so I've been going through it over the winter now. First thing I did was put new tires on it, and the book says 24 psi. Tires are the same size, but I'm willing to bet that tires today are a little different than the tires that were put on it originally. And I'm wondering if that tire pressure still stands true for today's tires.
Well, that original tire on that car was probably a Polyglass 70 series radial that was probably a
bias ply.
It was probably a bias ply. And
right.
Yeah, so it definitely different. And a lot of those bias tires were lower pressure, so 24 would seem realistic. So when they switched, when those tires were being changed out a couple years later and they were going with radials on a lot of this stuff, even if that had a radial on it, as they went newer, most of them hit a standard of about 32. I can still remember as a kid all the cars and the TV ads saying, make sure you check your tires. They've got to be at 32.
That number was out there a lot.
Yeah, cars, trucks, everything for, small trucks, not tractor trailers and stuff and buses, but they were 32, but, it was miles per gallon. And as we went into the 80s, into the fuel embargoes and all that stuff, as they made these cars smaller and fuel efficient, they wanted 32 in everybody's tires. So it was definitely a change. So now if you put tires on this car, do you have factory wheels on the car?
Yes.
Okay, if you got a factory wheel on there, it's going to be around that 32 range. A lot of it's going to be for the performance. When you buy a tire, look at the tire and see what the recommended pressures are. On the side of the tire, it's going to have a maximum inflation pressure. Usually not a minimum, but there was a few out there I've seen with a minimum inflation on them, just make sure the tire didn't fall apart. But you're probably going to be looking in that 32 to 35 range, and you'll see that the tires that you're going to be putting on it, most of them will probably say 45 PSI max for a standard load type tire, depending on what you put on the car. But you can kind of choose which type of tire you put on, performance, something a little wider or something, and I would not go under 32 on that car.
And if it was a newer vehicle, we would give you different advice because of the the whole debacle with the
gotta go with
Ford
the door.
Explorers and the tires that were underinflated when that first came out. That came down to an argument about what the tires said versus what the manufacturer had recommended, and that's why there was some legalities there. But we like to tell people to defer to what the vehicle says in most cases because the manufacturer has engineered it with a certain desire in mind, but you just can't ignore what's on that tire. In this case, the car's old enough, you're putting a more modern tire on there, you got to default to the tire, and that's where you're going to get closer to that 32.
Right. Okay.
Does that help you out?
Great.
Hey, before you go, we got to ask you what color your car is, unless you have another question first. Don't tell us. We're going to guess.
Yep.
I won't tell you, but quick question, because I'm going through this car totally. I'm going to replace the body bushings, urethane or rubber.
I did
urethane on my Trans
Is
Ams.
this more a performance car or nice cruiser that you want quiet and smooth?
This is my wife's car.
I would.
So
well, and
there's no performance noted.
Okay, if she just wants it to run nice and you want it to stick around for a while, I would probably go with the rubber. They'll last another 20, 30 years before they start to crack. So, it's something that would give it a little smoother ride with the body transfer.
A little more give.
The polyurethane is going to be just a little tighter, a little noisier, a little rougher. So I would definitely go with the rubber on this one, on this black Corvette.
And then I think this Corvette is like a silverish color, maybe leaning towards blue.
What is it?
No, I'll give you the official name is Donnybrook Green.
Oh,
hey, there we go. That's a good color.
I remember that green that was on I love the green that was on the 60s cars, Camaros, and different things like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a Berkeley classic for sure. Well, thanks for being a Under the Hood Show hoodie, and we're glad you're calling for some advice.
BerkeleyOneClassics.com. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
You bet. See ya. All right, we're going to jump over to we're going to talk to Tim, who has a 2018 Ford Expedition. Hello, Tim.
Hi. How you doing today?
Good.
Yeah, it's a Ford Explorer.
Oh, Explorer, 2018 Explorer.
Yeah, I just got new tires, Goodyear Comfort Drive, and then I had it tuned up. I had everything done, the regular transmission. I had the cooling system. I had it tuned up. And now I'm getting crappy mileage, and just kind of wondering, is there a reason? And I've ran several tanks through it since I've gotten the tune-up, and it's still getting about 13 miles to the gallon.
What was it previous, and were you under the same driving routine, location, conditions? For sure?
Yes, sir. Yep, and same driving conditions. I haven't changed anything.
What was the previous, though?
It was about 18, 19, and then it would get 22, 23 on the interstate.
And now you're stuck around 13 to 15?
Yeah, if that. Not even that. Not even 15.
I would take a real close look if they've done this. So the both the dash and the actual fill up at the pump, when you're trying to find out what the miles per gallon are, can be affected by vacuum on the engine. So if they had pulled spark plugs out of this and they were doing some work around the engine, if a leak was developed somewhere because of that, let's say in a vacuum line, or the mass airflow sensor tube between the air cleaner and the engine, or the mass airflow sensor itself, when they changed the air filter, if there was a lot of dirt on it and a speck of that dirt contaminated the mass airflow sensor, then it could cause this to have a very skewed mileage, even though they didn't really, intentionally cause something to fail. Sometimes, we've had this happen, and we've had to go back and look and verify the fuel trims and find out that, there's a little bit of dirt on the mass airflow sensor, and we'll take some Berryman B12 chem tool and spray it off and clean it and make sure that is reading properly. Otherwise, it's going to give us a code in the worst case, and poor mileage and just poor operation in the best case. So I definitely want to look at that and make sure that there's no problem with that, and then look for any kind of there's very few vacuum lines anywhere on that engine, but there is one on the back, and if that's leaking just a tiny bit, it could cause that thing to have some really skewed fuel mileage.
Okay. So you recommend I take it back to the dealer?
I would. I would tell them, this car, I've had it a long time, and this is what the mileage was. Yeah, and say, I've had it a long time, and the mileage has always been this. We did the tune-up just to make sure we'd keep that mileage, and now it is drastically reduced. And the first thing they're going to think is, he's crazy. It's, it's just reading it wrong. But say, I check it by going to the pump and filling it up and using the calculator and figuring this out, and it's matching the dash, and it's been this way for 2 months or whatever it has been since it was done. So there was a definitive change that can be tracked and recorded from the time it was done till now.
Could you please retrace your steps and just
ask them, what do you think? Because if they say, well, we can get it in and check it out, and then all of a sudden you got a $200 bill for them looking at it and not finding anything, you want to ask those questions up front. What's this going to cost to find out what may have happened, or do you offer a free check because you just did this work? Now, it could be something else that just popped up that failed. Those things do happen, but it could also be that something's loose. So if you got a friend too that's a mechanic, it's pretty easy to do a quick check. I know I've had some people at church before ask me, "Can you just take a listen real quick? Something's weird." And I was like, "Sure." And you open the hood, and I'm like, "Hey, that vacuum line's not working good. There you go. Should be fixed." So sometimes that's the cheap way. It's not what you know, it's who you know, or however that thing goes.
Yeah. Hey, and guys, can I push my luck? I just got a 2018 Toyota Camry hybrid.
Okay.
And I'm just getting, we're only getting about 36 to 37 miles to the gallon.
In town or highway?
That's highway. I just had to drive out to Rochester several times, and it's only getting 36, 37, and we're hoping to get better mileage out of it. Is there anything there? And it's a certified pre-owned. So.
Yeah, that's the normal mileage on the highway for that car. You'll get more in town than you will on the highway, because in the highway you're assisted by the battery and the electricity when you stop in
town. You mean?
Yeah, you stop in town. It uses regenerative brakes to charge the battery. Then you take off, and it's using the battery to accelerate the car along with the gas engine, and that gives you your increased mileage. But once you hit the highway, the electric's gone, other than if it's got enough charge that when you're going up a hill, it might help a little bit. But that's really weird. When the hybrids came out, people had to get used to the sticker on the window saying city. It might say 45 city and 32 highway. And they're like, is that printed backwards? And even some of the salespeople said, oh, it must be backwards because we've never seen that before. And then as they learned quickly, and that was 15, 20 years ago, no, that's correct, because they have more of an assist in town at the low speed than they do on the highway. So they get better fuel economy. Now, if you drive it long enough in town, you'll drop that number pretty quick. But usually, 1 day's worth of driving, that's the way it is. So yeah, we have, our customers seem to be in the mid 30s on the highway with those cars and in the 40s in town.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for the call.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back after that. We're going to get into some more calls. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
That's all you got to do to fix it? I could have paid a guy $1,000 to do that. This is Under the Hood.
I like that one too.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom, 866-594-4150, and you can get under the hood as well. Don't forget, if you watch our show on YouTube, you can catch our after show. You can also call us at 866-594-4150 and get on the after show. We appreciate all of you listening on radio stations, almost 250 of you stations across the country, and podcast as well as watching on YouTube. We're going to go right to the phone, and we're going to talk to Austin in Minnesota. Let's see if I do this. Austin in Minnesota, or Austin. Chris does that. Austin, 03 Chevy, no start. Tell us about it.
So I called you guys a couple months ago about it, and I've since stuck a lot of money into this thing.
Ooh. Does it start?
And it's currently sitting at the dealership right now, and it's got them stumped too.
Ooh. What's it do or not do?
So back in October, what caused it was they were driving down the road, and all of a sudden reduced power came on, and the truck died. Okay, so we got towed back to the yard and started monkeying with it. Well, then the truck wouldn't turn over. It bumped the starter, but wouldn't turn over. So it was having a charging issue also. So at first we replaced the alternator, and then we replaced the body control module, and then we replaced the ECM.
Wow.
And then it used to have a Astro start in it. We took that out, but the harness looked a little hacked up, so we replaced the harness that goes up to the steering column and for the wheel clock. We also replaced the starting switch in the column itself. New starter, and every once in a while we can get the truck to start and run. But either A, it will start throwing random codes, or they'll just shut the truck off. And then every time you try to start it again, they'll just kind of bump the starter intermittently.
I'm following you there.
And it's also had a neutral safety switch on the transmission replaced about 10 months ago. And
You've
all
spent
the grounds have been
you've spent
cleaned.
$3,000-$4,000, haven't you?
More than that.
I was being hopeful. Shoot. And this is a Silverado 1500, if I remember right, with a V8 gas engine.
2500 with the 8.1.
2500 with an 8.1. I think what I'd do, if you had brought it in and we had seen you had done all this work to it, I think the first place I would start would be I would put our voltmeter on the computer at both the battery and the ignition terminals, or the pins at the computer, and I would read that voltage. I'd just be starting with that because that comes from the ignition switch directly to that. So I would look and I would turn that key on, and when it gave me a problem, I'm going to find out, do I have solid voltage getting to my computer? Because if I lose those voltages, all these things every single thing that you've got going on can happen. So I'm going to find out what's going on. And then I know if I'm losing voltage, the problem lies between that computer and the battery, which I'm going to follow backwards from the computer to the ignition switch, then from the ignition switch to the fuse box lies in between the computer and the ignition switch, but then from the ignition switch back to the fusible links and the power under the hood, I would check that. And the other thing you might just check is, has anybody pulled the fuse box under the hood? Have they taken that cover off and lifted that fuse box up just to make sure that the bolts on the back of that are tight that hold the connectors to the back of the fuse box? Has that been done?
That's the one last thing I forgot to mention. That's also been replaced.
Okay, so then it had to have been done if they've replaced it, because those fuse boxes go bad, they get moisture in them and fail, and also the wiring where it bolts to the back. We've had a number of issues with those trucks with wiring back there. The other thing we have problems with is the ground on the back of the block right above the transmission there, where that wire is crimped into the little eyelet ring that bolts to the back of the block. That can get pretty thin and come apart. We had one yesterday on one of our own trucks, and when we diagnosed it, we looked and it looked solid. We pulled on it. It looked pretty good, but we measured it and the voltage was really low. We only had a few volts, and I knew that I only had 3 feet of wire. Where could it be? So we pulled the cover off and looked at the whole thing. It was all solid, but then we got to that eyelet and we unbolted it, and when we unbolted it, moved it, it fell off. So we cut it and put a new end on it. The voltages were all back like we were supposed to, but somewhere along the process, it looked like it burned out a module in the transmission, which is common because you get voltage spikes when you lose that. And Shannon's going, "Oh, is that what happened? I
I'd heard some of this.
I didn't want to hear that." But now he's got the details, so I don't have to tell him after the show. But that is pretty common. You've got to have the
and that
power
was a truck
and
we drove and just parked because we
Yep.
quit using it.
And then rain and moisture, it just happens, is exposed. So with yours, I'm going to be checking using my voltmeter and going between the grounds on the computer and the power on the computer so I can look. And if there's any interruption there, I'm starting with the basics. I'm finding out why I don't have ground and why I don't have power on one of those sides. And once that's fixed, if you find that that is your problem, it's probably going to fix everything, because it's very unlikely that you've got that and a dozen other problems. It's probably one basic thing, but they've got to, whoever's going after it, the dealership, whoever, they have to attack one basic thing. And we like to start at the beginning. We're going right to the computer because we know that's going to just take a short chunk. We've got the ignition switch and the fuse box and the battery coming up to that thing. And we know if it's all good there, then we need to move.
That was kind of like the gentleman earlier that had the 2014 Suburban that would just be randomly dead. And then he could sit in there and come back to life. That's the same advice we gave him. You got to isolate that power first.
Right.
And so, boy, I feel for you. That's a tough one. I remember when you called in, I figured that was down the road and working by now.
No, I kind of wish it was, but
yeah.
When you can't get it to start, it's kind of hard to drive it.
Have them take a look. I would do that. I mean, if you're talking, a lot of times these guys at the dealership are willing to at least listen to what you're saying. And I know, and everybody seems to have their own opinion on what's wrong with it when you're going into a mechanic to get it fixed. And sometimes we'll have customers tell us what it is, but I value what they're saying, and I'm going to listen. And then I'll just think in my head, okay, I've heard this. No, it's definitely not that. Or, well, it could be. And sometimes they're right. And but they just give me a little different idea of where to think. But if they, obviously they're frustrated and trying to find it, but if they haven't found it yet, say, have we started like right at the computer? Do we have power and ground at the computer when it fails? Because we know when it starts, it's there, but when it fails, is it still there? Because if it's gone, that gives us a short path to check between the computer going back through the ignition switch and the fuse box to the battery. That's the basic I would start at.
Is there constant power to the ECM?
There is. There's constant power and ignition power. I believe there's 2 constant power feeds there and 2 ignition feeds going there, and they all have to be working.
Okay.
All right. Well, good luck with her.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
If that one sits any longer, we're going to have to start guessing the color, because it will be a Berkeley Classic if he doesn't get it fixed pretty soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for. Sorry, I shouldn't make a joke. It sounds horrible.
The color of rust if it sits too long.
Exactly.
Paint's all faded, gone. All right, take care. Oh man, I feel for him. That's just hard when you end up with something. I mean, it's been in the dealership now, and
a lot of parts bought.
We're back. It's the after show. Wasn't that quick?
It was. 2 hours went flying by again, and we're happy for all the hoodies that are tuning in. We can have some fun talking to you, and maybe help you out a little bit along the way. That's always the goal.
Yeah. Some of these things, the diagnostic stuff is what really, really kills people and mechanics, and just in general, where you're trying to find a dead battery, you're trying to figure out, no starts. What's the cause of the no start? Do I have fuel? Do I have spark? Do I have a timing chain that's jumped so I've lost compression? No engine in the world has ever run without compression or without spark or without fuel. That's the definition of engine, something that compresses air, has compression to ignite the fuel that's dumped into it. With the spark, boom, it goes. It's got to have all those things. And we have so many coming to our place and have that. And then, of course, you get the ones that say, well, it only dies every couple months. And it's like, I don't want to see it. Well, now it's dying every week. Don't want to see it. It's got to die all the time or we can't do anything with it. I mean, I just had one not too long ago that's been sitting up there now, and it needs to go back. And they told me, oh, yeah, I drive it now every single time I drive it to work a couple miles.
Is that Hummer?
Yeah, yep. It will not start. It will not start. Well, guess who drove it all over the place, and it started every single time.
Oh,
so
gosh.
It needs to go away. It's just one of those things where you don't know. And you know what? Maybe it did have the starting problem, but in the act of towing it out on the tow truck, something moved around, and now it's going to work for a while. Weather changes. It's warmer out. Maybe it's going to work for a while. And when you tell a customer, I don't want to work on it, well, nobody else will either. It's like, well, wait a minute. Am I your last choice? You've been to 10 other places and they didn't want to work on it. And now you're just calling me last. Well, thanks for putting me on the end of the chain, but yeah, I don't want to work on it either.
But sometimes you get the benefit of all the work everybody else has already done.
Or, I do.
Or
Shannon,
confuse you enough.
I have found somewhere, okay, we fixed your problem, but there's 3 others caused by people trying to fix this, and they didn't leave it the way it originally was. So now something they put on was bad.
Yeah, we've had that happen enough times.
No, it's...
Does the, and then what Russ was talking about during our show, we have a truck of our own that we drove it every day. We took the van body off it and transferred it onto another new truck. And we've had this truck for sale, and we've got somebody that wants to buy it. Actually, they've paid us for it. And now we went to start it, and it wouldn't leave first gear. And all we did was parked it.
Yep. And it was working great.
Yeah.
But
all we did is park the truck. But it has been sitting outside without a van body on it now for 6-8 months.
Yeah. We'll get it. We'll get it figured out.
But I mean, that's the kind of thing that can happen, though, is that something just changed, and it's nothing anybody did. It just happened, and that is hard for me to understand it as an owner, and it's hard for people to understand that for their vehicles. They just don't get it.
What do we do?
Yeah, so you just want to be able to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, it happens. It's just the way cars go. But anyways, we appreciate all of you guys and girls out there listening under the hood. Thank you very much. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. It's we're getting real close to 6,000 subscribers, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's a big jump from where we started.
Yeah, started out about 700 when we started doing the show because we just weren't really posting anything. But we've posted a few other videos out there besides our live stuff, and we've got some more stuff coming here as the summer gets here and progresses through. But we appreciate it. Anybody likes and subscribes, it's very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and that'll do it for Under the Hood.